In Israel, Ultravax Israel's crisis is a dire warning to America. Guess what? There is a massive surge in COVID-19 infections in Israel, despite being one of the most vaccinated countries on earth. In June, there were several days with 0 new COVID infections in Israel. The country launched its national vaccination campaign last year and has one of the highest vaccination rates in the world, with 80% of citizens above the age 12 fully inoculated. COVID, most Israelis thought, had been defeated. Fast forward 2 months later, Israel reported 9,831 new diagnosis cases in one day, a hairbreadth away from the worst day figure ever recorded in the country, 10,000 at its peak during the third wave. More than 350 people have died of the disease in the first 3 weeks of August. In a Sunday press conference, the directors of 7 public hospitals announced that they could no longer admit any coronavirus patients. The principal cause of Israelis' current predicament are the dominance of the extremely infectious Delta variant, along with the worrisome decrease in vaccine efficacy after about 6 months. As Israel vaccinated its population almost exclusively with the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, which received full FDA approval in the United States. But in early June, with citizens over the age of 60 almost completely vaccinated, Israel scientists began observing a rise in infections among the double vaccinated. In order to keep the number of COVID deaths down and avoiding a fourth national lockdown, Israel has embarked on an aggressive effort to provide all adults with boosters in a matter of weeks. Israel will then reconfigure its vaccine green passports, granting them only to the triple vaccinated and limiting their validity to 6 months. So let's talk about this. So what can you shed any light on what's happening? I thought if everybody got vaccinated, we could beat the virus, but that doesn't seem to be happening. Can you explain that at all?
Yeah, that was poor messaging from our health officials from the very beginning. We said, take the vaccine and you could get your life back. But that's not how it works. We all knew that these antibodies were going to wane off. And the reason why is last year, when we were looking at patients that had COVID from natural immunity and looked at their antibodies, a lot of them started, about 5-6 months after the infection, many of them didn't have antibodies. Well, they started out with a high level. So when you look at natural immunity from last year, it was natural that the antibodies from the vaccine, like we all knew in the medicine, they were going to wane off over time. We just didn't know how long it would be. I think we all knew, because if you were looking at the natural immunity from last year in the studies, then most likely, these vaccines are probably the immunity is probably going to last you about 4, 5, 6 months, maybe a little bit longer. But you know what's interesting is, like, when the vaccines were rolled out at the end of the year, last year, people were talking about, some study came out saying it's going to be 5 years of protection. There was a lot of these things that were not based on really any science, but these things were pushed out, because then now people will have more confidence and they will go run out and get the vaccine and go, I'm protected for the next 5 years. Well, this is not unexpected. The antibodies have waned off. The new variants they're escaping the antibodies. They're not effective. So it's a combination of both of them. And now we're in the situation where, we've got to give another jab, and there's no data to support that. And Israel obviously considers to be fully vaccinated, having 3 vaccines. And, here's the other thing is, there are many countries that we still don't have, these poorer countries don't have vaccines. And here we are, the Western world, and we just jabbing everyone away. But here's the other thing: it's like we think we live in a bubble. Like, those people don't even exist in these other countries that don't have access. For example, I have friends in New Zealand and Australia. I mean, the numbers of people in those countries, they don't have, but most of them are not vaccinated. I think something like 20% of Australia is vaccinated. So why aren't we rolling the vaccines out to those countries to help them out? And what is shown in the Pfizer and the Moderna trials was the effectiveness was about 93%, maybe 92% after one shot. The second shot was a booster. So why not hold off on that? Why did they come up with the 3 weeks after? Why not wait for three months after they get the second shot? You get a longer immunity you can stretch this out a little bit more. None of this makes really any sense. And I think the Israel thing is really coming to light because we were thinking, oh, they're fully vaccinated. I think it's a combination, as this article was saying. The antibodies have gone down. You've got this new Delta variant. You've got many other variants now that are popping up. But here's the other interesting thing. The boosters, they're not for the new variants. They're for the old variants.
You're kidding.
Nope.
So how could they So Delta is more effective. If you're vaccinated, you can still get the Delta. You can still get sick with the Delta. It's breaking through, they're called breakthrough infections, right? And so you're saying the boosters don't deal with the Delta?
No. And one of the interesting things was when the mRNA vaccines were rolled out, one of the benefits behind the mRNA is, one, the scalability, and in a very quick time, which what made it very attractive. And two, if they could change the code very quickly, just in a matter of a couple of weeks, to confer protection against new variants. And my understanding, and I was thinking for a little while, maybe these new boosters, and I've talked to a couple of public health officials and people at the vaccine research. Actually, one person on our team was in the Pfizer trials at NYU, Dr. Parikh, and she said, nope, they're giving a booster for the old vaccine. And I don't know the reason why it's not been configured for these new variants.
So let me ask you this. This is a question that I have so people like to bring this up. They compare the vaccine for COVID-19 with like the measles and mumps and polio. So why do I have immunity from polio forever, but I don't get from that vaccine, but I don't get immunity from COVID-19 forever? Well, tell me the difference.
So a lot of those vaccines are, either live attenuated or they're weakened viruses, like a full virus or like an intact virus that's either been weakened or killed off in a process. And you introduce that to the body, and then your body makes a full antibody or a full immune response. So you have your antibodies, you have then a T cell response. When we are using this mRNA technology, we're only targeting one component of the virus. We're only targeting the spike protein. Because why the spike? That is the thing that is infecting the cells, that infects the cells in the body. So what they've done is build antibodies against the spike so that it prevents it. If you do get infection again, it then will neutralize those spikes from the vaccine. So you're not being introduced to a weakened virus. You're not introduced to a dead virus or an inactivated virus. You're introducing a little piece of it. And that could probably be a reason why you're not having a robust immune response, let's say from a live attenuated or weakened virus. Some of the other viruses, I believe there's the vaccines, the one from China is a live attenuated or an inactivated virus. They're not coding for the spike protein. So it'll be interesting. I've not seen any data yet out of China and the countries that have gotten the Chinese vaccine. It'll be interesting to see sort of how much of protection they're getting and compare it to the mRNA.
So why would they do it that? Well, so my reaction is, well, why wouldn't you do it the polio way, which is permanent? Why would you do it this way, which is temporary?
You can quickly roll this out. See what happens is for a lot of the other vaccines, it's like there's this incubation period. A lot of times they put it in egg yolk. It takes months and months and months and months to get those vaccines. The thing with the mRNA, the technology is that you can scale it very quickly. So that was the attraction. We could get it to market quicker than some of the other platforms. Now, there are still other companies, believe it or not, Jimmy, and this is my argument I've made, is that we're so focused on these mRNA vaccines. But there are other platforms out there. For example, there's this company called Novavax. Novavax is probably going to be the fourth vaccine to get an EUA. I feel like the FDA has been dragging their feet. The EU regulators have been dragging their feet about it. But the data looks amazing. I know a lot of people who are on the clinical trials for Novavax. They use a different technology. They are introducing a spike protein, but through a nanoparticles. They don't use mRNA to deliver the spike proteins. And then at the same time, there are all these other tiny biotech companies that have some really fascinating platforms. They're using I know we were talking about horse dewormer, but that's actually a horsepox vector. one company is doing that. There's another company that's using peptides to deliver the vaccine. So there's multiple different platforms. There's like over 100 different manufacturers that are making these vaccines, but we're not talking about it. The number of people that have told me, I do not want to take an mRNA vaccine, but I'll take a Novavax vaccine, is staggering. I think we could close the vaccine hesitancy with approval of Novavax. I think we can get more people vaccinated by giving them more options. Isn't that what America is about? Options and different. You give people different options and let them make a decision. So I personally feel like more resources, more focus should be going to some of these little tiny biotech companies. The problem is that they're running a trial because they're little tiny, looking at maybe 500 patients. When you got your big pharma, Pfizer, Moderna, they got 50,000, they got 100,000. So now when you got these statisticians that are looking at it going, oh, you don't have the numbers, your N is too small, it's only 500. And these little biotech companies, they're like literally scraping just to get by. So it's just but part of it is the how much the journalists and the media just do not let the public know about these other platforms. Give them that information. Even a big company like Novavax. Novavax has a 40,000 patient trial in the United States and Mexico, and another 30,000 patient trial in the UK. How many people know that? The number of people say, oh, I didn't know about Novavax. They're a big company. They are running big clinical trials right now. But why aren't we talking about that? Why don't we doing a report and saying, vaccine hesitancy, people are nervous about mRNA technology. Okay, well, Novavax, this is the technology. Would you be willing to do it? I'm willing to bet half those people that are concerned about the vaccine, they would take it. And I've done a sort of an internal study or sort of talked to a lot. I mean, we have close to 10,000 patients that we're seeing, and most of them are not vaccinated because they're so nervous about worsening their long COVID symptoms and worsening their vaccination symptoms. And most of them are like, look, if the Novavax came out or a different platform, we would take it. So I think when we're framing these questions about anti-vax, they're not anti-vax. Maybe 10%, 15%, no matter what vaccine you give them, they're going to say, nope, I don't want it. But to say 50% of the country is anti-vax, no, absolutely not. It's disingenuous. I think we can close the gap by introducing more platforms and getting more approvals out there.
We're doing a live Jimmy Dore show in Sacramento, October 3rd. We just added a second show. Plus, we're doing stand-up comedy in Florida, in West Palm Beach and Dania. And then we're going to Buffalo, Baltimore, Tempe, and Portland. Go to jimmydoorecomedy.com for a link for all our tickets.